מקבל עליי את מצוות הבורא. ואהבת לרעך כמוך, ואהבת לרעך כמוך, זה כבר גדול. הריני מקבל עליי את מצוות הבורא. הריני מקבל עליי את מצוות הבורא. ואהבת לרעך כמוך, ואהבת לרעך כמוך, זה כבר גדול.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's good to be back with you again. We are happy to be able to take this time apart from our daily lives for spiritual searching, rest, and renewal. I want to remind you that the link for our prayer book is in the chat below, or will be momentarily if you're with us on Zoom, and will be in the comments in Facebook, and of course, right below the screen on live stream. We're going to begin our service with Yom Zeh L'Yisrael on page 330.
Yom Zeh L'Yisrael hara v'simcha, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat menucha. Yom Zeh L'Yisrael hara v'simcha, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat menucha. Tzivita pikodim b'ma'amot Sinai, Shabbat u'moadim lishmor b'chol shana, laruch lefanai maset barucha. Shabbat, Shabbat menucha. Yom Zeh L'Yisrael hara v'simcha, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat menucha. Yom Zeh L'Yisrael hara v'simcha, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat menucha. Kidashta b'rochta b'kol yamim, b'sheshet kilita melechet olamim, b'matzu agumim ashketu v'itcha. Shabbat, Shabbat menucha. Yom Zeh L'Yisrael hara v'simcha, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat menucha. Yom Zeh L'Yisrael hara v'simcha, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat menucha.
On page 173, we set our intentions and remind ourselves how inextricably linked our bodies and souls are, how important it is to be aware of each of them, and how both of them are part of our ability to be connected to God and the world around us. And so we give thanks for both our bodies and souls. We start on page 173, sharing in the English together, and then the cantor will lead us in Elohai Neshama. Join with me. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe. With divine wisdom you have made our bodies, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous maker and sustainer of life. Were one of them to fail, how well we are aware, we would lack the strength to sustain life before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. Baruch ata Adonai rofei kol basar umafli la'asot.
Elohai, neshama shenatata bi teharai, ata verata, ata yitzarata, ata nefachta bi, ve'ata meshamera bekirbi. שנשמה בקרבי, מודעני לפניך, אדוני אלוהי ואלוהי אבותיי, מודעני לפניך, אדוני אלוהי ואלוהי אמותיי, ריבון כל המעשים, אדון כל נשמות, ברוך אתה אדוני אשר בידו נפש כל חי ורוח כל בשר איש.
On page 180, we share in our acknowledgement of the value of community and the role that we play in rising others up, being there for them in their moments of greatest joy and greatest need. We read together. These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people, but the study of Torah encompasses them all. On page 194, we continue with Chasi Kadesh as we rise, if we're able, and remain standing through the Shema.
יתקדש שמי רבה, אמן. ועמד יברח חירותי, וימנח מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחייך בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב, וימרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולמי ימיה, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה, שמי לקודשה בריחו, לעילא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ורחמתה, דמירן בעולמה, וימרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvarei choshech, oseh shalom uvarei atakol. Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha berachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh bechol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam bechokma asita, mal'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha, tit barach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al me'orei or she'asita yefa'arucha sela, or chadash al Zion ta'ir, v'nizkech ulanu mehera le'oro, baruch ata Adonai, Yotzer HaMe'orot, on page 199. O God, inspiration and guide for all, you have spoken in 1,000 tongues for us to hear. In every land and every age, your children have heard you and imagined you in separate ways. And yet, O God, you are one, unifier of humanity. We give thanks for the sages and teachers who bring us understanding of your will. Gratefully, we recall the lawgivers and prophets, the psalmists and sages of Israel. And joyfully, we remember that from the dawn of Israel's life, we would turn to you and find purpose. May the teachings of our ancestors live on in our minds, and their passion for righteousness stir our hearts. Help us to live so that our daily conduct reveals the beauty and wisdom of your truth. Baruch atah Adonai habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. You may be seated. We continue with Ve'ahavta on page 201. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levaynecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'vitecha v'valechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
On page 203. Together, sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, and earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come. The song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace.
Israel.
We rise for the tefillah on page 205.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, Eloyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'koneh Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot V'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh Hakol atah Rav V'Hoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechayeh Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, U'Motir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, U'Mido Melech, Melech Memit U'Mechayeh, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah la'achayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Nikadesh, Nikadesh, Nikadesh et shimecha ba'olam, Nikadesh et shimecha ba'olam, kishem shemakdishim oto, b'shemei marom. Kakatuv al yad neviyecha, v'karazel ezer ve'amar, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzevot, Melech ha'aretz kevodo. Adir, adirenu, adir, adirenu, Adonai, Adonai, Adonenu, Madir, Madir Shimcha, Bechol haaretz, Baruch kevod Adonai mimekomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu, hu Malkeinu, hu Moshienu, Vehu yashmienu, Vehu yashmienu, berachamav le'nei kochai. Ani Adonai לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. On page 210, we celebrate the gift of Shabbat, singing Yismachu. On page 212, we continue. On this Shabbat day, as you graciously receive our prayers, help us to hear your call. Grant us enough health to fulfill our duties and the compassion we need to attend to others. Teach us humility that we may perceive our own faults, and grant us the wisdom to be forgiving of others. Give us the courage to be true to our highest selves and the charity to see the best in those around us. Give us patience enough not to become discouraged, hope enough to overcome all fears for the future, and faith enough to know your presence. O source of blessing, look with favor upon us. May our offerings be acceptable to you. We praise you, Adonai, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levarecha, v'yirah na'avod. At this moment of thanks, thinking about not only our Hoda'ah, our prayer of thanksgiving, which is in our Siddur, but this moment on the precipice of Thanksgiving, when we are traditionally, as Americans, called upon to celebrate family and friends, and also to take stock of the blessings and gifts we have in our life. I invite you to take a private moment of Thanksgiving. At this time, I saw someone posting this the other day. Normally, we like to thank God for the things that we hope we will have in the year to come, or think about what we might want to accomplish. But I think at this time, it's important to take note of the blessings we do have, to be grateful for the things that we do have. So take a moment for your own personal reflection to think about whatever it is, large or small, that lifts your spirit, that brings you joy, that gives you a smile, that enables you to make it through each day and wake up the next morning ready to start the next one. take a few moments. On page 216, we sing Sim Shalom, our prayer for peace.
Sim, sim, sim shalom, sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim, sim, sim shalom tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael oimecha. Barucheinu Yotzreinu, kulanu kechad, be'or panecha. Sim, sim, sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim, sim, sim shalom tova uvracha. Ki ve'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu. Tvarat chayim ve'ahavat chesed, u'tzedaka uvracha v'rachamim v'chayim v'shalom. Sim, sim, sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim, sim, sim shalom tova uvracha. And please take a moment for your own silent prayers. Yehiyu leratzon, im refi v'egyon, libi lefanecha, Adonai tzori Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'yimeru amen.
This week's Torah portion is Toldot. We're going to do a text study in preparation to hear Cantor Merlin chant this section of our Torah text. And as I said in my 2 minutes of Torah and at the introduction of services last night, there are a lot of familial tensions in this Torah portion. We start with Rebecca hearing about the destiny of her two sons, Jacob and Esau. That's the section we're going to look at. And it really culminates with the deceit that Rebecca plans and Jacob carries out, where Jacob pretends to be Esau in order to receive the blessing from Isaac at the end of his life. So it's a moment where it's a text where we see the weaknesses of different personalities, how it is so easy to misunderstand and misrepresent the truth, how easy it is to not get along with our siblings, or unfortunately, when parents engage in parental favoritism and the effects of that on the children. Certainly, many of us have wonderful Thanksgivings every year, but if you're like my family, even at the most amazing dinner or time together, there are certainly moments where my siblings and I in the past have reverted back to our elementary school selves, even though we're all respectful and wonderful adults and love each other very much. So I always look at this Torah portion with the recognition that familial relations are never perfect. So Joel, are you gonna give us that screen share? Or should I find it and share it myself? There we are. Thank you. The part that I find to be very challenging and somewhat tragic in this text is this idea that we are always vilifying Esau because Jacob, of course, is our patriarch. He is the one that gets lifted up. And we forget to look at the nuance and recognize that every relationship is between at least two people. And so each person has a responsibility in that relationship, and how important it is not to just create stereotypes or assume things about other people as if they're caricatures of themselves. Okay, so we're going to start looking at our Torah text itself from Genesis 25. This is the opening of our Torah portion Tolda. And Dorothy, it's great to see you. Would you read the English of the Torah portion itself? So the Genesis text that says, this is the story of Isaac. And Joel, I don't know if you can make it a little bigger. Maybe not. Can you see it, Dorothy?
Yes.
Okay, great.
This is the story of Isaac, son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took to wife Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Padan Aram, sister of Laban the Aramean. Isaac pleaded with Adonai on behalf of his wife because she was barren, and Adonai responded to his plea, and his wife Rebekah conceived. But the children struggled in her womb, and she said, "If so, why do I exist?" She went to inquire of Adonai, and Adonai answered her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two separate peoples shall issue from your body. One people shall be mightier than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." When her time to give birth was at hand, there were twins in her womb. The first one emerged red, like a hairy mantle all over. So they named him Esau. Then his brother emerged, holding on to the heel of Esau. So they named him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when they were born.
Great, thank you. So we start with the generations, right? We have not only Isaac's lineage, that he's the son of Abraham, right? But we also have Rebekah's lineage, which is wonderful. And again, always points to the importance of Rebekah, because she, even in the previous, like 2 weeks ago, we knew that she was born, and 2 Torah portions ago. So we have all this lineage, but when we have that, we have this prophecy that Rebekah receives from God about what the future of her children will be. But when they're born, they're just 2 babies born, with descriptives, but with no specific personalities, of course, because they're just born. So what I want to look at is to think about how the text, how the traditional commentaries paint the 2 boys, and how that, I think, informs how we think about our story and the story of the people of Esau, but how that's perhaps a disservice to ourselves and to all of our peoples, the 2 peoples as well. Sherry, why don't you read our Rashi for us? Right, we're going to focus on verse 23. 2 nations are in her womb. 2 separate people shall issue from your body. One people shall be mightier than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So, Jerry, please read the Rashi for us.
Still in the womb, they are already separated. One wicked, the other righteous.
Thank you. So I think Rashi's first comment is without, it's straightforward. Yes, they're already two separate individuals. We know that at least from the prophecy, right? But then Rashi puts in his own commentary with no evidence from the Torah text itself, right? To say one is wicked and the other is righteous. Of course, he is reading into the future history. He's got all the midrashim at his command that will paint the descendants of Esau as wicked. Though if we were to read through the Genesis text itself, we would find zero indication of Esau's wickedness in any way. Maybe more of an outdoorsman. We've got the classic like country folk versus city folk kind of tension, agriculture versus hunter-gatherer, whatever kinds of separations you want to make. But at this moment, there's no wickedness. Really, there's no wickedness in the text at all. So Nechama Leibowitz points that out for us. Anna, will you read the Nechama for us?
In the homiletic commentary, Esau is not an individual, a specific historical figure at a certain point in time, but a prototype, a symbol of historic Jew hatred. And a symbol cannot contain both good and bad, but must be all of one piece. Esau is a symbol of hate. In the Torah narrative, however, Esau is a human being the son of Isaac and Rebekah. Like all human beings, he has good and bad qualities. His good side was his respect for his parents, and we dare not overlook this, nor forget that he was a person.
So I really love this. I really love this commentary because when we read our rabbinic commentaries that we love and respect, like Rashi or Rambam or Ibn Ezra or Sforno, whatever we want, there's a litany of them. They paint a picture of Esau, as Leibowitz says, as a symbol of Jew hatred, of destruction, and of evil. And so when we read the text and read the story of Esau, we imprint those stereotypes, that bigotry onto who Esau is. But he's a human being, right? He is a character in the story, and perfect, of course not, but he is a person that is deserving of our respect and even of our sympathy. And it's important for us to remember that when people are different than us, even our adversaries, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are our enemies. And the Talmud has a great story. I actually use this story a lot in one of our versions of our Passover Seder, but it reminds us that we can come from different cultures, have different perspectives on the world, and still work together and even be friends. Dimitri, will you read the Talmud? Not the whole Talmud, just the Talmud commentary.
I will try to contain myself.
Thank you.
Rabbi Yehuda said, in the name of Rav, read the text not as goyim, but gaim, proud ones. This refers to Antonius, descended from Esau, and Judah Hanasi, descended from Jacob, from whose tables there was never lacking neither radish nor lettuce, whether in summer or winter. Indeed, though proud and powerful men, they were personal friends with one another.
Thank you. So the Talmud is playing off on this. Two nations are in your womb, right? So goyim are nations. So Talmud is playing with the vowels, because of course there are no vowels in the actual Torah text, to say, they're proud people, but they don't have to be diametrically opposed from each other. And let's look in the future, right? Antonius is a descendant of Esau. Yehuda Hanasi is a descendant of Jacob. And they both sat down together and shared food. They didn't always agree, but they were allies of each other. And as we see much later in the story where Jacob and Esau come together and make amends, there's an assumption, especially on Jacob's part, that Esau is out there to get him. But from Esau's perspective, he just wants to figure out a way to coexist. And I think so often when we disagree with someone or we come from a different perspective, we assume the worst of others instead of finding the things that we have in common and lifting those up. as Brad Hirschfield shared in this piece, his book, which is, a few years old. And I think so much of this, we like to look at it from a conversation about the Arab-Israeli relations, Palestinian-Israeli relations. But I was really compelled to share these teachings again, because I think they speak so much to where we are in our own national story right now. Jerry, you just got one line before, so I'm going to ask you to read the Brad Hirschfield now.
Too often we think that that by making room for each other, we are somehow surrendering our integrity. That integrity involves a pushing away, a discarding of beliefs and parts of ourselves that are compromised. But the word integrity has the same root as integrate. When we fight for the integrity of our beliefs, we are actually fighting to consider integrating that which seems threatening or alien. We have the most integrity when we are integrating the widest possible range of ideas and people. When we work from a place not of uniformity, but of endless diversity, we will begin to find the kind of unity that will heal us and begin to heal our world. We will figure out that the challenge is not how to fit everyone into a single room, but how to build structures with enough room for everyone.
Thank you. So yesterday in the New York Times, the op-ed, I think if you go on their website, it's still on the front page too. There was a column by David Brooks. I quoted some of it last night during services, where he puts forth different ways to communicate and not the typical ways. And one of the things that he puts forth, one of his 9 tips, so to speak, was to follow the tradition of the Talmud, which is to find the disagreement in the disagreement, not to just disagree for disagreeing's sake, but to take the time to fully understand the perspective of the other person. Even in the end, if you still walk away not agreeing with each other, by better understanding the perspective of the person you or the entity you're disagreeing with, you may evolve your position or certainly expand it. At the very least, you don't see the opposite as your enemy, but as a different way of looking at the world. Or as Hirschfield says here, we don't all have to fit in a single room, but we can live in a structure where there are different rooms that all support each other. Because if you think about your house, you need each of those rooms to retain the integrity of the whole. We're at a moment in our national life where there are forces trying to remind us of this truth, that it's okay to disagree. We don't have to be enemies of each other to have different perspectives. And I would encourage all of us to listen to those voices. We're still a divided nation, but that doesn't mean that we're not all Americans, that we don't all have the greatest purpose of trying to make our country the best it could be. I think Toldot reminds us that it's okay to disagree with our family members and still love them and be in relationship with them. But I think the lesson from this parsha has national import as well. So something to think about as we move towards Thanksgiving this week, and as our country is in the midst of a transition in the weeks and months ahead as well. Amen. Cantor Berlin is now going to lead us in the Torah blessings and chant for us these opening lines of our parsha.
So that you can join me in the Torah blessings on page 250. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach, Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah. Ve'ele toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham holid et Yitzchak, Vayehi Yitzchak ben 40 shana, bekachto et Rivka, bat Betuel ha'arami, mi padan Aram, achot Lavan ha'arami, lol isha. Vayetar Yitzchak l'Adonai lenochach ishto, ki akarahi, Vayeater lo Adonai, Vatar Rivka ishto. Vayitrotzutzu habanim bekirba, Vatomer im kain, lama ze anochi, Vatelech lidrosh et Adonai. Vayomer Adonai, la shnei goyim bevitnech, ushnei leumim, mime'aich yiparedu. Ul'om yil'om ye'emat, verav ya'avod tsa'ir. Vayimle'u yameha laledet, vehine tomim bevitna. Vayetze harishon admoni, kulo ke'aderet se'ar. Vayikre'u shemo Esav, ואחרי כן יצא אחיו, וידו אוחזת בעקב עשיו. ויקרא שמו יעקב, ויצחק בן 60 שנה בלדת אותם. And the blessing after. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. In the presence of Torah or Torah teaching, the spirit of Torah, we pause now to offer prayers of healing for those who face the future not fully whole, those who are listed here on our healing list, those who are in our hearts. And we think about and offer our prayers for all those around our world who are suffering either from illness or from anxiety due to COVID-19. Take a moment to think about those in your own life in need of healing. Whisper their names out loud. We share in our prayer for healing, Mishaberach.
Mishaberach avotenu, mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu, mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Amen. We continue now with the concluding portion of our service. Aleinu is on page 283. And if you are physically able to stand, I invite you to do so. Otherwise, we all rise spiritually.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו, וגור עלינו להמליך מלכותו. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ,
may be seated. As we prepare to share in the words of Kaddish, I offer meditation number 2 on page 289 from the New Union Prayer Book. In nature's ebb and flow, God's eternal law abides. When tears dim our vision or grief clouds our understanding, we often lose sight of God's eternal plan. Yet we know that growth and decay, life and death all reveal a divine purpose. God, who is our support in the struggles of life, is also our hope in death. We have set God before us and shall not despair. In God's hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. Under God's protection we abide, and by God's love are we comforted. O life of our life, soul of our soul, cause your light to shine into our hearts and fill our spirits with abiding trust in you. On this Shabbat, we consecrate the yahrzeits observed in our congregation this week of Elizabeth Adler, Philip Barshop, Saul Belasco, Bob Biasioli, Donald Blair, Ed Bormaster, Bernard M. Brooks, Sarah Levy Chaffis, Gussie Cohen, Hildegard Levy Cohn, Leon Collins, Esther K. Dalkowitz, Adeline Daniels, Lillian Goldman Davis, Sally Eisenstein, William Feldman, Michael Gagnon, Lieutenant Colonel John W. Gilbo, Sarah Glass, Alfred Goodman, Alvin Gottlieb, Rosa Grinman, Arthur Gurevich, Goldie Henkin, Elsie Hirschfield, Pearl Hoffman, Emil Z. Horner, Faye Horowitz, Jaime Karatkin, Helen Jeffrey Kelsaw, Sandra Koenig, Samuel Kraus, Eva Lauber, Malcolm Lauderstein, Nancy Drake Letty, Alphonse Lehman, Louis Levinson, Melville M. May, Anais Gomez Mills, Annette Ricklin Minkin, Jack Moss, Tommy Moss, Thomas Martin Newhouse, Sylvia Newmark, Fotini Papadopoulou Levidiotou, Sanford Pasternak, Dr. Carl Powerstein, Dick Rosenthal, Lawrence Rossau, Ida Bear Seidman, Gorman Seelan, Stephanie Simon, Shirley Singer, Adele Weiss Stern, Morris Stern, Adelaide Stover, Sarah Straggy, Doris Tobin, Harris Trodlier, Doris C. Wellis, Janice L. Williams, and Emmanuel Wolfe. To their names, we link the names of 3 who in the last 30 days, Shloshim, have been laid to their eternal rest: June Valerie Walker, J. Michael Freiberg, and Marshall Selman Jacobson. To their names, we link the memory of one who just this past week died, his family in the period of Shiva, Fred Cabby, father of Andy and Yvette, and grandfather of Ethan, Joshua, and Matthew. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for blessing, along with the memories of those who are in our hearts every day. Our griefs and sympathies are mingled as we rise together, one congregation, turning to page 294 to share in the words of the mourner's Kaddish together. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyamechon u'v'chayei t'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'v'yizman kari v'yamru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mivarach le'olam omei omaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei d'kodesha brechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiram be'alma v'yamru amen. Yehei shlam rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to all the world, to which we say, amen. Our closing song is Oseh Shalom.
Oseh shalom b'imromav,
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat
Have a
Shalom.
wonderful, wonderful week. Enjoy the nice weather
Happy
Shalom.
Thanksgiving.
and have a good Thanksgiving. That's right.
Happy
We'll see you
Thanksgiving.
next week.